the Bodie Show. Living on the water is the only life we know. Yo, ho, ho, ho. It's time for the Bodie Show.
Yes, John, we are doing content.
Oh, my God.
You are the content.
Well, I'm content.
You fit right in with that pun.
Yeah. I'm good at those.
Yeah. So we were just on the topic as we were warming up of just-in-time knowledge, which I'm proud of coining because that's definitely something that Steph would coin in a moment, and then I would lose it over for a little bit, for an inappropriate amount of time on the recording, which I might do now.
It's pretty good. I mean, it does reference, I think, a shipping concept. But before we get too carried away with your new joke, should we say where we are and then
Yes.
set the stage?
Yes. Would you like to do that? Would you like to start that?
Well, I'll just say where I am,
Yeah.
which is just barely breaking into the coffee on my couch here at the river in Fisher's Landing. That's it for me.
And you are in Repose, which is a very, very good place for you to be.
There's no other way to be right now.
Yeah.
What about you guys? Tell us some stories. What's
John, where are we?
there?
We are in Sarah's and my house in Southwest Harbor, Maine. And Jeff's been visiting here, and we've been traveling around looking at Bodie stuff and doing Bodie stuff. If your listeners don't know, Southwest Harbor is on Mount Desert Island, which is primarily Acadia National Park. So it's a pretty cool place to live. A little crowded in the summer, probably like Thousand Islands is. But then, come sort of Columbus Day, things we get our island back. So.
Yeah. And I've looked at Mount Desert Island. I've been here before, but I was really young and I don't recall. I've looked at Mount Desert Island on a map for a long, long time, and 2D doesn't do it justice because of Acadia National Park and the mountains, straight up mountains rising up from the sea.
We don't have that at the river.
No. Straight up mountains rising up from the sea on an island. So this is an island that is about like 2/3 of it, maybe half of it is straight up mountains. Cadillac Mountain, Green, which was formerly Green Mountain.
Was it?
I have read that this morning.
Well,
yeah,
good. That's something I didn't know.
Yeah.
Any more reading will do for you.
Yeah, look at that. and it is a magical place. So it's almost impossible for me to maintain a sense of where I am in my bearings because it is it's sort of like a horseshoe shaped with the opening of the horseshoe facing straight south, and then there are islands everywhere and lakes, and as soon as you drive onto the mainland, you're basically just traveling to the next peninsula.
Yep.
Up or down the coast. And while we're on, and there's the only fjord, the only legitimate fjord.
Fjord.
Thank you.
Yes. Yep.
I've been practicing on the East Coast. I was fortunate enough to spend the day at Brooklin Boatyard, and as you were saying, Mount Desert Island, big destination for lots of people. Big destination for lots of people who are really invested in sailing and boating. And one of my takeaways from Brooklin Boatyard is that there are people who are really invested in, I mean, not just like in terms of money, because that's a big part of it, but in like classic design and craftsmanship, and the sort of like heritage is an overused word. And I think especially for what Brooklyn's doing, but right, just in like the community and sort of human side of boating, sailing, boat building. So could you tell us a little bit about how you started out at Brooklin Boatyard and what your journey there has been? But what I'm mostly interested in is hearing about the people of the place.
Mm-hmm. How I got there was basically having sort of a life in boats and in the boating and yachting industry, which brought us up here to Mount Desert Island to work with some other yachting companies. And about 20 years ago, I was having a conversation with the fellow who was, at that point, the president of Brooklin Boatyard, and said, "Hey, there are a lot of your boats out there for sale, and by various brokerage firms and that sort of thing." And I said, "So they're selling them and they're getting money for selling them. Wouldn't you like to do that?" So we talked about it for a while, and we decided one, that we would start a brokerage for 4 boats, not just Brooklin Boatyard, but all boats. And then that I would come and do that along with captaining and running a race program for a boat that they were building at the time, which was a 76-foot sloop by the name of Goshawk. And so I did that, and because the owner had no experience with any big boats or anything like that, or running a race program and that sort of thing. So I came on that and, did that with that owner for a while, at the same time starting up the brokerage and helping out in the yard in various capacities. And it's slowly evolved to now where I'm 100% of the time just selling boats.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brokerage.
Marketing and selling.
Yeah. So brokerage, I think most people think of that in real estate terms.
Yep.
They have a real estate broker. there's a listing and a transaction, that sort of thing.
Yep.
We were chatting the day before yesterday after it wasn't the 50 cent tour. It was like the $500 tour of Brooklyn Boatyard, which
I saw more of the yard than I've seen in the last 3 years.
and you have a professional background in outdoor education.
Yeah.
Going back into Outward Bound Hurricane Island days.
Yeah.
You described what you do as an evolution of that. I wouldn't even call it an extension, but an evolution of that.
Yeah. Evolution is probably, I would have said extension, but yeah, I think now that you say it, evolution is a better word for it. Because I still use all the things that I learned then about learning enough about people to be able to work with them.
And work with them under circumstances that they maybe aren't familiar with.
Or comfortable with.
Have ambition for.
Yeah. And sometimes having to guide them down a different path than what they thought they needed.
What they've fallen in love with, sort of in the abstract.
That maybe they need to, come a little bit more full circle before they go straight out.
If you could think of, not a specific, talking about a specific person, but like, what's a sort of a story arc for that? If somebody comes to you, how do you develop that relationship? And under the fullest circumstances of this educational approach, how does it play out?
Sort of as a hypothetical, you have somebody that comes and they have little to no experience with boats, and their dream is to sail around the world. You need to temper those expectations a little bit. Find out what they do know. Find out, it's sort of mercenary, but find out what their real budgets are, and then take all that information and try to steer them in something that will be good for them now, a boat and what kind of boating they're going to do. And then it'll be good for them now and good for them to learn on and good for them to move to the next step, where then hopefully you sell them another boat and get them a little further down the road.
And over the course of that, you're optimizing this relationship between yourself, these people and the water and their life on the water, and really trying to get them to the right place. And so I definitely see the parallel or the evolution from outdoor education. You have somebody show up, they've never done bareboat, open deck,
right,
sailing and rowing along a coast.
Right.
Maybe they've never camped. And so you have to assess who they are, where they're coming from, what they're going to be up for, and also how to push them outside their comfort zone, but in a way that's
fun, and that they can be successful at, and that they can then learn from and continue on.
How? Because this maybe could operate on the flip side. So if somebody shows up, are there ever circumstances where you're actually steering people into maybe a more ambitious or more adventurous direction? Hey, you guys are probably up for more than what you think you are.
Well, yeah, there is, and I think the easiest example of that is somebody that says, "I only want a cruise," I only want a day sail, and then you say, "Would you like to come along with us on this race?" And it's a pretty quick evolution. They go, "Wow, this is cool,"
right?
And how can I learn more about this? And what kind of boat can I buy that'll go faster than everybody else?
That's a really good lever to pull.
Yeah, it works out great for everybody.
Everybody. That's cool. That what I've learned just in as we went out sailing yesterday, which was fabulous on a really remarkable Pilot 55, recently built in Turkey.
Yeah, it was designed by Andre Hook. I think French. I can't remember what.
Sounds French.
It sounds French, or it could easily be Dutch too.
Yes.
And it's built by Meteor Yachts in Bodrum, Turkey. It's a Pilot Classic 55, so PC 55 for short. Very good friend of mine, a fellow who I've been racing with for 20 odd years. Had it built and shipped over to the United States. Picked it up in Baltimore, brought it back up here.
So we were on that yesterday and out and about amongst the islands next to part of Mount Desert Island, because it feels like Mount Desert Islands in a way. There's the ferry lines make these larger islands almost contiguous in terms of how people live with Mount Desert Island. And you described racing here as adventurous. So you sail and race around and through some of the natural features.
Yep.
There are enough of them that you can have many different races with many different natural features and like crazy little channels that you have to get through and tide matters and all that kind of stuff. And so it's not just go out, pound around a few buoys and go back.
Right. There's a lot of things to consider, not the least of which being, tide and currents, because, there can be currents that will help you or hurt you. There will be depths that you can either go over something or you can't. And can't is very slow. So you try not to do that.
Can't go over is also, that goes along with that goes, if you try or if you are but don't realize you're hitting some rocks. So that's similar to our boating in the Thousand Islands where it's not mud and sand, it's shoals which are made of rocks. And I learned that what I would consider to be a shoal in the Thousand Islands is often called a ledge here.
Yeah, right.
Which is a different name for it.
Right. Same idea.
Yeah.
Actually, some of the spots around here they'll name them a shoal, but they're rocks.
Either way.
And they don't move.
Either way, they're not getting out of your way.
Yeah.
With this hypothetical crew who, I want to say couple, but it could be anybody, right? But I just want to cruise or I just want a day sail. And you say, well, what about racing? And once you come along, now they've actually interacted with this natural environment in a new and different way.
Yeah.
And if you were to say, hey, what about racing and take me out and go around, a triangle of buoys, I'd be like, well, okay, fine. Maybe if I was really wired to be competitive and to want to drive fast, right?
Right.
But also I can see racing here being a different kind of engaging, because for somebody who's competitive, they get that. For somebody who is competitive, but maybe also, or even more so, looking for adventure and natural beauty and just sort of a full experience, they get that.
Yeah.
And you assemble a crew of different people, they're going to get something something different out of it.
Whole, interaction between people. Yeah.
Yeah. And the sort of like social scene of racing, I could call it a social scene, and that could be taken as, oh, well, we're going to have a cocktail party afterward. But we were drinking coffee and chatting this morning and reflecting on what I've learned over the couple of days here. When you assemble a crew and go out on a boat for the day, you're effectively creating your own reality show where you put a bunch of personalities. You put a bunch of personalities and people with different backstories in a contained environment and under some sort of artificial adversity.
Well, that's not unlike putting a bunch of prep school kids and kids from the inner city together on an outward bound boat.
There you go. And so we hadn't talked about this yet, but and the way I saw you interacting yesterday, very patient and facilitating and catalyzing and understanding and letting people get to the answer on their own, but also being there to support them. So you've been an outdoor educator through this.
It's all the same.
It's all the same. That's awesome.
Yeah, one of the I did a lot of work with inner city kids with Hurricane Island Outward Bound, but I also did stuff with corporate management teams would send their people to Hurricane Island, and we'd take them out and then debrief and see how they interacted and everything. And the thing that I took away from all that was that there's absolutely no difference between an inner city youth group and a corporate management team. It's just one might have a knife in their pocket, the other has a pen.
Right. And so they're human beings showing up with whatever they're bringing with them.
The leaders are the leaders, and the followers are the followers, and the dynamics are all very similar. It's just you're wearing something different.
That's fantastic. And you think, you maybe have a different self-image, but ultimately, that's the beautiful thing about Outward Bound is you put people in that situation, and everybody's just a human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And you put a group of bankers on a sailboat, and everybody just gets to be a human.
Yeah.
It's like the power structures may or may not try to persist, but whatever. I'm definitely overthinking it now.
Right.
You have to excuse me.
Right.
Right.
And we're going back a lot of years. I mean, that was 50 years ago, something like that.
We don't need to talk about that part.
Yeah.
No. How long were you with Outward Bound?
I was with them for like 3 or 4 years, and then by happenstance, we were down in Key West running the Florida program with them, and there was another sailing program going on there called J World, which is a sort of racing sailboat school. And from past sailing and racing in Long Island Sound, I pretty much knew all the people that were there, and they asked me to come work for them. That sort of started me on a path that finally ended up here.
So J World, that was a school?
Yep.
Okay, so that was another form or
of outdoor education.
Right. How long were you with J World?
4 years.
Okay.
Something like that.
That's a lot of outdoor education, because those aren't just like, 40 hours a week or 9 to 5 kind of years.
Yeah, it's mental and physical.
Mm-hmm. And seeing group after group
Yep.
of people on a weekly to monthly basis. That's
and adjusting for each group and individual too.
So that launched you into a career around the yachting and racing world and in the industry.
Well, yeah, more the first manufacturing and then into the service industry and then eventually evolving into brokerage.
Brokerage, right?
Yeah, because from J World, I went to working for Tillotson and Pearson, who was the manufacturer of J boats, and worked for them for a number of years. And then one of the dealerships that we would send boats to was out on Cape Cod and Crosby Yachts, and they were in the process of modernizing a classic one design called the Liano Senior from wooden construction to fiberglass construction. So I went out there to help with that, but also to help with service management. From there, ended up going back to Rhode Island and worked for Ted Hood in the construction and then management of what was then Little Harbor and now is owned by the Hinckley Company. So big marina and service sector. Mm-hmm. And then came up here to work for the Hinckley Company, doing the same thing, service management. After a while, migrated over to Morris Yachts, another boat builder here in Southwest Harbor, and got into brokerage work. And then that's what led me to work with the people at Brooklin Boatyard.
As you started up with Brooklin, which was 20 years ago?
Yeah, like 20 years ago.
Okay.
2004.
As you started up with Brooklin, you were drawing on all of that to both figure out and work into the service and construction side of Brooklin. Like it
I was more the service and brokerage, and then of course and then managing a race program for one of our clients.
Goshawk.
Goshawk. I'm not a boat builder. I can fix stuff.
Yeah.
If I need to, but I'm nowhere near the class of the guys that you met the other day.
That was nirvana.
It's a pretty special place.
Pretty special place. In starting up the brokerage, understanding service, because you have to understand what a boat is made of at any point in time in its life, what it needs, what it doesn't need,
and you need to understand your clients too,
what they're going to be up for.
Yep.
How they're going to take care of it or not. Yeah.
Yep.
You were uniquely prepared from 8+ years of outdoor education and then a career with various boat builders, but also on the service side, really understanding how all this happens over time, right? It's not just like new boat gets spat out of the shop and it then takes on a life of its own.
Right. I really sort of dropped out of the service side of things, at least service management side of things at Brooklyn, because I was really trying to focus in on establishing the brokerage,
Making matches, right?
but would still work for service in the things that I'm, that I have more expertise with, like rigging and, occasionally painting and varnishing and that kind of stuff in the free time. But as things have developed, I'm 100% brokerage all the time.
I saw your talent, but also your enthusiasm for rigging yesterday. So this new boat, the PC-55, had some, just there had been some questionable decisions in routing of lines in the mast.
Right.
And you dove in. We were. Sarah was joking, and I was right there with her about your wife, Sarah, who's sitting off mic right now. We're joking about how you were in your bib overalls, looking like a little kid hopping around the boat, and the natural joy you feel or comfort you feel in that environment was just like physically apparent. And then when it came time to sort the rigging of multiple halyards, I guess, in this mast,
all the same color,
that had gone through the wrong way here, and we're behind this thing there.
And how did it even get there?
But sorting that out, it just seemed like you were in a very natural place in terms of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, of everything that I do, I think being on the middle to the pointy end of the boat is my most comfortable space, because I've been there for so long.
Right. And that's where most of the business happens in terms of what
we like to think about that. as foredeck, that the guys in the back of the bus really don't matter.
Yeah, I was definitely ballast yesterday, but that just seeing how happy you were sorting those lines, that was really neat.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, and then coming back to Goshawk and the race program, what was that like? I mean, you'd done a lot of racing at that point. Was that the first time you'd run a full program for a yacht, or?
Yeah, actually, it was the first time I'd run a full on race program. But I've been involved with enough other programs that I knew what had to be done and what arrangements have to be made, and gathering crew, getting commitments from people and then working with all of that.
Oh wait, is that more outdoor education?
It is outdoors. Well, it's outdoors, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. But gathering a crew and building a team of people.
And that's just team building stuff.
Yeah.
And that's outward bound, but that's anywhere. You got to do team building with an owner that never really had gone outside of land. And his goals for this were to compete offshore, specifically in the Marblehead to Halifax race, in the Bermuda race, Newport to Bermuda race. And we succeeded. The boat was pretty much right out of the box. Didn't even have headliners. The interior lighting up above was like dangling by wires, and we raced it to Halifax.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about Goshawk.
Bob Stevens design, Brooklyn Boatyard built, 76-foot, what we call spirit of tradition boat. The sort of definition of a spirit of tradition boat is something that the aesthetics of it sort of harken back to the classic yachting designs of 30s and 40s, that sort of thing. But then you've got carbon fiber masts and deep fin keels, and the construction of it is super light but super strong. And so you're taking the good things from the past and the good things from the present and marrying them together and making something that's really pretty and really fast.
Wow.
Yeah.
So those races in the race program, how many years were you involved in that?
Well, I worked with that owner for a couple of years, and then things were really sort of percolating with the brokerage side of things, and he wasn't really that involved in or interested in doing any more offshore stuff. So I sort of backed away from that. And
when you dove into the brokerage, that became a lot more about the boats that Brooklyn Boatyard builds. In that the original original proposal was to kind of have Brooklyn take a larger part in the sale and resale of boats that had been built in the yard.
Yeah, that's the original concept, and to be able to use that as sort of a baseline, if you will. But to survive as a brokerage, you can't just focus in on one little thing. It's like I can't just sell classic wooden boat, because there are so many other kinds of boats out there, on the grand scheme of things, if you pick one type of boat, you're very small, and you don't have a lot of options. So the brokerage as we do it now is pretty diverse. Going from selling a Beetle Cat, which is all of about 12 feet long, to something that's 76, 80 feet long, something like that. I'm selling sailboats. I'm selling powerboat, fiberglass, wood, steel if something comes along. I'm trying to pick good boats.
Yeah.
And then find good owners for them.
Is there a common denominator through these?
I think the common denominator is that the people who buy our boats are real big fans of Brooklyn Boatyard.
Okay.
And so that brings them, we do our marketing. They can't help but scroll through the brokerage page. So Brooklyn Boatyard itself is a big part of it. It brings people in, and pretty nice people.
Why is that? That's a big open-ended question, and I have my own answer to it based on my experience meeting folks. But what is it about I'll call it the organization, but what is it about the team of people and the culture at Brooklyn that is so engaging?
I think it's the people and the story. The yard was started in 1960 by Joel White. He was the son of E.B. White.
Charlotte's Web.
Stuart Little. That got to put a little sailing in there. He grew up in Brooklyn, Maine, and was lobsterman, sailor, and then boat builder. Started the yard, ran it until he passed away. But before he did pass away, his son Steve took over the yard, started to build the yard, even bigger than what Joel had, and towards where it is today. We're one of the few people in the United States, in the world, maybe, on the grand scheme of things, that do one-off yacht construction, up to our biggest boat so far is 92 feet. And now Steve has retired. At his retirement, gave the company to us. So we are an employee-owned company. It was kind of cool watching the transition there, because all of a sudden the non-work conversations got a little shorter, a little bit more of a spring in the step, of getting things done and everything, because, this is mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sense of agency.
Yeah. So pretty cool.
Investment.
Yeah.
And I mean, culturally, those were Steve's values in play there.
Because he sees, I don't want to speak for him, but I think we all see each other as family. And so in essence, he was just where the yard had been passed from his father to himself. He didn't have son, daughter to pass it down to. He just passed it down to the next family, which was us. And
family's a big deal. You just described briefly yesterday how there's almost a summer camp that happens.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of, it's an entertaining place to work and watch.
So what's going on when there are kids about?
Well, one of our guys, Eric Blake, who's the vice president of the company, he's just a natural community organizer, let's go have fun kind of guy. And so he started up this thing called the Brooklyn Skiff Club. The kids, summer kids and year-round kids, you name it, they all get together and they build skiffs, and then they launch them, and the big launching ceremony. I'll bet. Yeah, and then they all pile into them and row them around the harbor, and that's really it.
That's I'm sure an understatement of how much fun it is.
Yeah, and then they have a big expedition on a super calm day and go out to some island or something like that. They have a lot of fun.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And so they're mixed in. I was fortunate enough, like you said, you saw more of the yard than you have in a few years. Where are they building those skiffs?
They were building them in, as you recall, we have names and numbers for all the different buildings there, and I should preface this by the explanation that I gave to you, that the entire facility was at one time a sardine processing plant or factory, and so the last remaining structure from those days we call the factory, and that's where the Skiff Club built their boats.
When I saw it, it was full of, it was doing its winter thing, which is storing boats.
Yeah.
Smaller boats.
Starting to do its winter thing.
Wasn't full yet.
Weather's been pretty good, so we're trying to get as much done as we can now.
Yeah. So they build in there. You've got a view out on the harbor.
Yep.
And Are employees' kids mixed in with all this?
Sometimes,
Depending on age and who's got what.
Because
Yeah.
a lot of the guys that work there, or guys and girls that work there, have kids.
Yeah.
And so they're right in town, and and sometimes it's the kids of people who are there just for the summer in their own homes, and I think there's been a couple where it's kids that are the children of boat owners.
Okay.
Boat owners that with us
Have built with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I met a bunch, and everybody was kind and also moving, like you said, springing the step. These were not long, lingering conversations. It was like, hey, how's it going? And it was typically when they were on their way from to in the midst of doing something.
Right.
I'll be straight. I was like, man, I wonder if they would take a middle-aged applicant for laborer or spar carrier. Because everybody was so nice, kind in greeting, clearly intelligent and invested in what they were doing, working well together. With all groups of humans, you have ups and downs. So I'm not gonna make any point that it's like perfectly idyllic. But it struck me that
That's pretty close.
Yeah, it struck me that it was exactly pretty close, and that that this was a really special place to come to work every day.
Yeah, it is. Like we sort of delved a little bit into the past of where I've worked over the years and stuff. And first of all, it's the place I've worked the longest of any place, and it's the place I've had the most fun at every day.
Every day. Day before yesterday, when we did the $500 tour, it was you took a day off from work, and
Yeah, well, I kind of wanted to.
yeah, we were right back there.
Yeah.
You weren't running away from it with one of your vacation days.
No.
Yeah. The team there, like, how many total over the year?
How many people?
Yeah.
I think we're around 70.
Really?
Right now. Yeah. It's fluctuated. I think maybe when I started it was 55-ish, and then it went up. We had some big projects, and it went up to maybe 60, 65.
Mm-hmm.
And then remember when the recession things really kind of calmed down a little bit, and we lost some people. But now we're back in the fray, and have been for the last several years. And by the way that things are booked out, will be for the next several years as well. Already, with work lined up, and going to just keep going.
Just keep going. Okay. Well, and so the business, as I saw or experienced it in terms of the physical plant, there's a sort of interdigitated, meshed, matrixed service and new build. One thing that struck me was that we walked through the service carpentry shop.
Yep.
So it was a really nicely outfitted wood shop.
Kind of small, but
Yeah.
yeah.
A couple of carpenters there working on, what it takes to fix, upgrade, rebuild boats, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Are those folks working on the restorations that you do?
It depends on sort of the size of the restoration, because if it's a smaller boat and it's not a full-on restoration, it just maybe fixing up this piece here, and then next year you'll do the next bit. They'll be doing that. When it's a full-on restoration, and that can be anything from like the Herreshoff 12.5 that we saw, where we gutted the thing and building new floors and planking and all that kind of stuff, which that's all of 16 feet long, to a restoration like the 72-foot Purdy commuter boat Aphrodite, where basically the only thing left from the original boat was the windows and the stanchion and the windlass. Everything else was completely changed. It was one of those things you pull the old one out, put a new one in, kind of thing.
I encourage people, if you have a minute, to make a note of Aphrodite and go look it up. And
Yeah.
I used the phrase when we were talking about it. It was, it's kind of like a halo boat, which is a term from the car industry when a car manufacturer will design a car that, sort of attracts a lot of attention,
Yeah.
and sort of is a statement about what the organization is capable of and will take on and will do.
Yeah. Hey, just to go back to kind of finish up that question, though.
Oh,
You said that the service guys are working on smaller projects like that.
Yep.
But when you get a project like Aphrodite, it's it's not just two carpenters, and the service guys and the guys who would normally be just building new boats turn to on that. and put their skills to use in a different way to do a major project like that, which can take a year and a half,
Yeah.
2 years.
Right. All hands on deck.
Depends on the boat, and what needs to be done.
And was it Katrinka?
Katrinka was
Another big restoration, if I recall?
That was very much a restoration. It came to us in really tough shape. It's 40, 45, 46. I forget how long it is, but under 50. Bill Tripp Jr. design, built in like 1960 or something, and then we rebuilt it in 2008, I believe it is. And we cut the deck right off of it. It was, balsa cord deck, and the balsa you could pick it up in your hands and squeeze it and water would come out. It was just that bad. So that went away somewhere, and a bunch of guys got together and rebuilt that. Meanwhile, we gutted the entire boat, bulkheads and everything, and then rebuilt the interior of the boat pretty much the same as it had been original, but with a few changes here and there that made sense. And of course, all new stuff, engine, electrical system, refrigeration, and adding everything that would make it a nice cruising boat now, and carbon fiber masts, and things like that.
So it got
because if Harrishoff had carbon fiber, he would have used it.
He would have used everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is like on that and Aphrodite are sort of on the almost new build end of restoration.
Yeah.
And so
they really are. Yeah.
Right. That's when the mesh is like, almost complete. And then
but it's just that much that you can call it a restoration.
There's just enough left.
Right. Because with it, I think I told you that story that the folks who own Katrinka had shopped the project of restoration around to a number of boatyards, and to a yard, I think their comment was, well, I can build you the exact same thing for less money than what you're talking about to restore it. And, and the people said, well, you don't get it. We want to keep this boat going.
Keep this boat going. I'd love that.
Yeah. And so they came to us and we said, oh, sure.
We'll keep it going for you.
Yeah, we'll do it. That'll be fun.
So when it's time for a new build, it's time to go into the shop, which...
it's actually, before we even get to the shop, there's a lot that goes on ahead of time. And that's with either working with an outside designer or working with our design crew, it's a 4-person design crew headed up by Will Sturdy. So there's that. What are we going to build to begin with? And so there's a lot of work either with the other designers or with the client to come up with a design for what it is that they want to do. And then, there's, of course, figuring out how much it's going to cost and is it going to fit their budget and, all that kind of stuff. Then we finally get around to actually building something.
And I was, again, $500 tour. I got to see the design office. Loft, 4th stories up in this huge, beautiful waterfront building.
Yeah.
View out over the harbor and off to islands.
Yeah.
And
you'll notice that none of the desks actually face the window.
No, they don't.
We wouldn't get anything done.
Just be watching the Maine coast go by.
Yeah.
Which is hypnotic. So there's a team of people there all working together. What are some of the different roles in there? So you said head designer Will Sturdy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the other designers. Will sort of coordinates it all. Then it goes down to the project managers, who they work with the client and with the crew. So they're sort of a go-between and make sure that everything, happens the right way and all that kind of stuff. And then you get down to the different people who are actually doing the hands-on work. You've got carpenters and painters and electricians and electronics guys, and sometimes subcontractors that come in to do work of a specialty nature. And then you've got, the guys in the yard, the guys that move the boats around.
Yeah.
And they're very much an important part of all this too, because, these are some big pieces of wood that we got to move around and do some things that you probably don't do every day.
Right.
Like rolling over a 90-foot hull, from upside down, because the boats are built sort of upside down first. And Well, at least we do it that way, and then we roll them right side up and fill them full of furniture and equipment.
Because you live with it, you can describe it in this sort of abstract. Walking into the boat shop from the outside,
Is it the main shop?
the main shop,
Yeah.
it's easily 4 like full stories of clear space from
Yep.
floor to ceiling.
Yep.
And there are multiple mezzanines built, and as you described, modified depending on what's in there to create this space, that space, this working area, that working area, depending on the shape of all the boats that are in there at any point in time.
Yeah. And I mean, it was relatively well. Actually, it was fairly full with the current build and then 2 restoration projects.
Yeah, the Herreshoff 12.5, and then the
That was Choi Lee.
Choi Lee. And so I walked in this door and I kept my eyes down for a little bit so that I could sort of take it in piecemeal. And there was this beautiful, significant Herreshoff 12.5, tented because it was going to be left for the weekend and there needed to be a certain amount of humidity. So it was tented with plastic with wet sawdust underneath.
Yeah.
There was the Choi Lee, which was the fiberglass boat, but getting a new deck because the owner had sailed it for a lifetime and wanted it to have its own next lifetime.
Yeah. I didn't actually talk to him, but I talked to somebody who had, and from what I gathered, it was he wanted to put it back the way he first found. So it's pretty much a complete restoration. Did you see that rudder?
I did see that rudder.
It was time for that to be replaced.
Yeah. So what John's mentioning is that this was sort of wandered up and down and through the mezzanines, and it was a little like Hogwarts with staircases going everywhere. Yeah. Like Hogwarts, if Hogwarts had a boat building shop, this would be it.
Yeah, the Rabbit Warren.
Rabbit Warren, yep. Yeah. And I largest air compressor tank I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Sawdust, but not messy, and this rudder. So there was the
wooden rudder.
Wooden rudder on the back of this fiberglass boat's keel. When we were up on the sort of main mezzanine area, speaking to one of the carpenters, you pointed and said, "What is that?" And there was this like really funky sort of arched shape that looked like it had been gnawed on, and that was the old rudder. And the new rudder was a beautiful. It looked like a mahogany plywood laminate of some sort, or maybe solid mahogany laminate.
I think the front of it's solid mahogany, and the blade part of it I don't think was on yet. Mm-hmm. And that may be solid. And they'll put drifts through it to hold everything together.
What's a drift?
A long bolt.
Okay, got it. Mm-hmm.
Just nautical names for stuff.
Oh, there are so many.
Yeah. It may be going back together all solid, which probably will be.
Yeah.
I don't think the blade will be plywood, but and this is where it's kind of interesting that the roles that people take in the company. That rudder, which is a carpentry task, is being made by the president of the company.
Really?
Yeah, Brian, who you met.
Okay.
Brian Larkin, who we met just quickly.
I met Brian. Brian was coming in as we were going out. I met Brian briefly, and he had Carhartts and a flannel like everybody else, and he's building the rudder.
Yeah, he's building the rudder for the Choi Lee.
Right.
Because he wants to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God. Are you taking applications for 51-year-old like rudder Sanders? I
don't know. What can you do?
If I talk about it too much, it's probably going to happen. Sorry, Missy. But that back to your point about the family.
Yeah.
Everybody sort of playing a part in different ways. I was struck by that. Who was the gentleman we met who was scraping bottom paint?
Oh, yeah. Havilah Hawkins.
Yeah,
Hattie.
Okay.
Yeah, as we call him.
Hattie, and we had a really wonderful conversation about rowing with Hattie that is probably going to end up being its own little episode.
I know. I just stood back and watched you guys talk.
Yeah.
It was great.
So what kinds of work does Hattie do?
It's more like what kind of work what Hattie doesn't do. He does everything, really. Well, he's not really into glassing that much, but
okay.
He's designed and built his own boats. He's been a schooner captain with the head boats that go out of Camden. For us, as of late, he's taken over the care and maintenance of a whole fleet of boats that are classic one design called the Winter Harbor Knockabouts that come out of Winter Harbor, which is a summer community a little bit to the east of Mount Desert Island, that they've had these boats since like the 30s and raced them over there, and they sort of didn't have anybody to take care of them anymore over there. And so one boat came over and we fixed that one up, and then the rest of them came.
Yeah.
So now it's kind of a yearly, twice yearly thing where, we in the fall we go over and pick them all up and tow them all back, and it's like 30 miles, and then they all go in their own shed, more or less their own shed. A couple other little classic one designs in there, and then Havel has been the one that has sort of rode herd over the whole fleet and getting them back all into really good shape, and then then sending them back out in the spring.
Havilah could do just about anything at Brooklyn Boatyard.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure it does just about anything that needs to be done.
Yeah,
and when I'm
mostly in the carpentry and rigging areas now. Yeah,
and when I met
like me, we're some of the oldest guys there.
Right, and at the same time, when I met Havilah, he was sitting on a sawhorse. In a Zen trance, doing an impeccable job of scraping bottom paint.
Yeah.
Off of a classic wooden boat.
Yeah, a Luder 16.
Right, and so here is a master carpenter, shipwright, boat builder, schooner captain, scraping red lead.
Yep. Well, not red lead; it's more copper.
More copper, yeah.
Yeah.
So red lead is I'm just kind of flexing a little bit on my old school boat knowledge. Red lead is like a name or a
more of a primer
that goes on boats. It's not really used anymore. It was.
They try not to.
Try not to. I'm sure people are hoarding cans of it and using it. Yep. But it's the color is distinctive. But Havilah was in a Zen trance scraping bottom paint and
with a heat gun and a scraper.
Yeah.
As you saw, that was a pretty thick buildup of bottom paint from over the years. And, I mean, after a while, a boat like that, when they just keep slapping paint on year after year after year, it'll get boat sick or paint sick, and it'll start falling off just from film fatigue. And it doesn't make the boat go any faster.
Right.
So he's scraping it down to bare wood or pretty much bare wood.
Yeah.
It's epoxied on the outside. But and then it'll have a super fair bottom for next summer.
That master craftsman scraping bottom paint says to me so much about the culture of Brooklyn, because Havel is doing what needs to be done.
He's doing what needs to be done, and he wants to do it right.
There isn't a job that's beneath anybody
and he'll do it right.
It was gorgeous. Yeah. Like it was as if a machine had done it.
Yeah.
But a machine can't do that.
Well, when you go to the Zen, you sort of turn yourself into a machine.
Yes. And so Havilah was doing it because it needed to be done right, and he wanted to do it, and he wanted to do it right.
Yeah.
And the culture is sort of supports that. It's built on that principle. And then Brian, building that rudder, wanted to do it right.
Yeah.
That is something then that somebody who's new to the organization sees.
Yep.
And that's a formative experience for them, and they see this.
Right. And it's an example to follow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I met one person who was, I may have met more than one who was new to the organization, but I met Julian.
Yep. Julian, one of our designers. He just came up 6 months ago, something like that. He jumped right into the middle of doing design work, mostly 3D modeling stuff, interior wise for the last new boat that we built, which was Wheeler 55. So it's a 55-foot power boat that sort of harkens back to the 30s, 40s look of motor vessels from that age.
Yeah. We got to stomp all around it in our booties, because at Brooklyn Boatyard, before you get on a boat that's in storage, you put on booties on your shoes.
Right.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But Julian, interestingly, he was sitting in the design office on the other side of the wall from the construction shop.
Right.
This four clear story
right.
space
Right.
with mezzanines and Hogwarts moving staircases and all this stuff. The way that he walked me through what he was doing, the way that he was talking about it, it was, in his mind, it was completely continuous with the construction happening on the other side of the wall that he was sitting on.
Yeah.
And everything he was doing was just all about that integration. Again, cultural, right? That design office was not sort of up in an ivory tower. It was in terms of how people are thinking about it.
Did you see all the sawdust on the stairs?
Yes. Up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one of the sort of project manager types, they're up and down all the time.
Yeah.
Just checking in with the designers and then going back down.
Right.
And even sometimes, it's not unusual for somebody who's actually, building something. They're down in the bottom of the boat, and maybe something is kind of puzzling them. It's not unusual for the guys to just come right up and say, "Hey, I'm doing this," and it could be that it gets whatever it is gets corrected in a very quick conversation, or it could be that somebody gets up from their chair in the design office and goes down and takes a look.
And they're in the bottom of the boat with the
And they're in the bottom of the boat
builder. There's no separate entrance to the design office, so you have to walk through the entirety of the boat building shop
and up every stair
and up all of the stairs that are in any whatever location they happen to be in that week to the design office. And so you're walking past what you designed, you're walking past what you've interpreted from drawings into 3D models and so on and so forth. And it is a magical place, and I have a ton of respect for everybody that works there, the way they work together. I felt that so I've been around the competitive rowing world for a long time, and one of the things that I enjoy is that when it's at its best, a rowing team is doing what needs to be done, not just in the boat pulling on the oar, but on land moving the boats around, the equipment, the oars. There's a bit of like a choreography to it that happens, and I felt that vibe when I was at Brooklyn yesterday.
Yeah.
When people were moving spars around, and when we were in the boat shop, people were kind of, it wasn't like there was a whole that was greater than the sum of its parts as I experienced the whole organization.
Yeah.
It was really neat.
That's one of the big reasons why I really like going to work.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We're gonna wrap up. Is there anything else that you think we should know?
Yeah.
No.
Got it.
All right. Yeah. Well, we're gonna talk again.
Okay. It's just a matter of where
and when exactly. Yeah. You are now officially a member of the Bodie Show broadcasting team.
Well, I do actually want to get up that way because I would like to go to that. Is it Antique Boat?
The Antique Boat Museum.
Museum in Clayton. Yeah, which we rebuilt. Pardon me.
Let's talk about that tie.
Pardon me?
Pardon me.
Pardon me.
Yeah. But Pardon Me is a tie that binds Brooklyn Boatyard and this location to the Thousand Islands and Clayton.
Yeah. So I really want to get up there.
Yeah, when we were on the water yesterday, Sarah's reminding me, we saw the Seaway Supplier from Clayton, New York, a barge that Jake Van Rieden and his company had. I don't know how it ended up here, and maybe we'll try and figure that out. But we got on your friend's boat, the PC-55, and I look over and I'm like, there's a name in a hailing port, Seaway Supplier, Clayton, New York. And I'm like, I know that barge. And I've been promising to tell you the story. I'll tell you the story. So the last time I saw that barge, it was driving back and forth in front of the Pumpkin Chunkin' Festival.
Right.
And Jake and crew had put plywood over the armor-plated landing craft pilot house,
right,
and painted a big bullseye on it in orange paint. And there was a contest to see who could hit the barge with a pumpkin, because that's the kind of stuff that goes down in the North Country on the water in the fall.
maybe Michael should get a trebuchet.
Maybe Michael should get it. Yeah, it's probably in range. Michael strikes me as being, he could be trebuchet curious.
Oh yeah. Gary for sure.
Gary's definitely going to be calculating angles on the trebuchet. But the part in me is for people who aren't from the Thousand Islands familiar with it. It is a triple cockpit wooden runabout that was built by somebody who said, I like triple cockpit. This is going to be very editorial, right? I am not going to do justice to the actual story of this thing, but it's not too far off the mark. But it was somebody who said, I love triple cockpit wooden runabouts. I want one that's 50 feet long.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's 50 feet, but it's pushing.
It's around there.
It's around there. And so it was a triple cockpit runabout that just got scaled up in every dimension, including the engine, which was like a Allison V12 or something.
Right.
Crazy big.
Actually, weren't there two of them?
There are two of them. Yeah. Airplane engines.
Yeah.
And it had started a restoration in the shop at the ABM, and it moved to Brooklyn Boatyard.
Mostly because it needed a new bottom. And those guys just didn't, up there didn't have the equipment to be able to do that. And so we basically took the engines out and anything else that might fall over while we turned it upside down. And then put a whole new bottom on it.
Got it. So it needed a new bottom, which means
Yeah.
gantries and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible to do, on the ground, right side up, but
Yeah.
man, I wouldn't want to do it.
And I remember years ago getting a video from you of the first startup of the engines after they went back in, and it was like wintertime in the shed.
Yeah.
How bad could it be? Let's fire them up.
Which quickly turned into like a fog bank coming in from Nova Scotia, and the whole toy box was just full of smoke.
The smoke from these engines. So the Pardon Me came back to the river, and that was a big deal, and it made a lot of people really happy because
That's a great connection.
Yeah, it is a great connection. And so we'll create some more connections.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well,
Good
thank you so much for chatting.
Oh yeah.
Yo ho ho, that's it for the boating show. Pack the cooler, grab the lines, let's go, go, go. Yo ho 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 ho.
It's like an involuntary holy shit. Oh my God. It looks fast, even in the air in this shed. Just trying to get my head wrapped around this. Oh man, the run out is gorgeous. So what's the story here?
This is designed by Boating Partners. Boating Partners is a yacht design firm in Spain. Started by a fellow by the name of Marcelino Boating.
I'm looking up at an incredibly sleek yacht hull that's a solid 10, 12 feet in the air at the bottom of it, and on a huge welded steel cradle. And from bow to stern, perfectly plumb bow, waterline starts all the way out at the cutwater, and then just sweeps pretty narrow for the first quarter, and then opens out.
Carries the beam pretty well aft.
Carries the beam really well aft, and then meaning that like narrow for the first quarter, then gets beamy and stays beamy, and the run out at the stern is there's no overhang basically. Based on the bottom pane at least, the water is meant to exit at the transom, and the keel is a massive foil with a huge torpedo of ballast at the bottom that's got like kind of some evil looking shapes to it. Or like, I said all business earlier, but some sort of defense industry look to it. I mean, it looks like a cruise missile or something like that. That's really neat to see in here.
Yeah.
And cold molded, so this is laid up out of
Right.
veneers.
Unfortunately, I can't get you up on top right now, but we can show you some pictures of it, because then you look at it on deck and it's teak deck. And nice low square house, varnished mahogany.
Yeah, okay.
all that kind of stuff. But
Racer cruiser, or really just racer?
really, just racer.
Okay.
Yeah, it races with a crew of about 15.